PBC, Matchroom, and Golden Boy, which one do you look at as the weakest competition and won't be around, say, 5 years from now?
Well, they all have strengths. For example, Golden Boy has a good in the Hispanic market with Mexican and Mexican American kids, and of course they have the guy who's now the big star in boxing from a box office standpoint. That's Canelo, and there's no arguing with that. BBC has a big stable of fighters, very good fighters, and so they're in a good position. Eddie Hearn, he's in a strong position in the UK, where the fans really turn out and buy tickets, but I think he's falling on his ass in the United States because he doesn't understand the market, and he says stupid things, and what he's doing now with Chavez, putting himself at risk with the Nevada Commission, is senseless. So I think, that of all of those entities, the one that is least stable, at least in the United States, is Matchroom.
Would you say one of the stupid things that he said recently is that he said that Dan Rafael was somebody that he pays for that it's kind of like on the dole?
Well, see, that was really, if he said about, paying the way of media to go into the fight, that would have been okay. But then he went on and he said, which was false, that Dan Rafael, but, he has to know, like we know. For example, we have a room block.
Right.
So it's cheaper than a writer or anybody checking into the hotel, because it's part of a price.
Right.
So he books his room through our people, and then when he leaves, he gives us a check for his hotel bill. He did exactly that with Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn has his head up his ass. All he's doing is wanting to talk in front of a camera, and he doesn't know what's happening in his own company, and he didn't know that Dan Rafael, in that particular instance and in all instances, had given his company a check for the full amount of the hotel bill. So it was very unfortunate to call out somebody who, has a good reputation, works for ESPN, and call him out like that. That was reprehensible, without even checking with his own people.
Well, ESPN is one of the outlets that can actually afford to send people out.
That is correct.
Cover the sport.
Well, no, and they paid. See, that was the thing.
Right.
When they read it, the ESPN people, they immediately contacted Dan and said, this is unacceptable. We pay for your room. What do you mean you take it from? And Dan explained what he did, and what he does with us and every other promoter, which is perfectly okay.
Bob, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what happened in Saudi Arabia. What do you think of that fight between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz?
Well, Andy Ruiz ought to be ashamed of himself. What he did was a disservice to boxing fans. He won the heavyweight championship of the world, and then to do a Buster Douglas where you don't train, you don't prepare, and you go in a ring. Look what happened to Douglas. He got knocked out by Holyfield. You never heard from him again. Well, Ruiz, there was no way he was going to win that fight, coming in with that close to 300 pounds by fight night. It just was a disservice. He ought to be ashamed of himself. He won the lottery by getting the fight with Joshua. He knocked Joshua out. And then to perform like he did, prepare like he did, he ought to be ashamed of himself. There's no way to color it otherwise. He didn't train, he partied, he did everything that fighters shouldn't do once they, fortunately, reach the top rung.
You cut him for being overweight. Is there a part of you that is kind of like, I told you guys so? Because he was
Well, yeah, he did that to us all the time.
yeah.
You know, I mean, one time he'd go in, he'd be on a diet, he'd go in at 240, you know, and he'd look great, and then the next fight he'd come in at 280. You know, he never controlled himself. I mean, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. He's a nice kid. He's a very nice fellow. But he ought to be ashamed of himself, and so should the people around him who were enablers. They should have known better.
So you think he's gone for boxing? He's never going to have another chance?
No, he'll come back, and so forth. It'll be the same crap time after time after time. He'll look good in one fight, because he's got a lot of talent. He got really quick hands, and he takes a good punch. But, you know, he'll win a fight down the line, and people say, Andy looked great. And he'd come in a fat pig the next fight, you know, and fall on his ass. So, I mean, that's what was happening to us. And when we were building him up, we weren't putting him in with King Kong. We were putting him in with normal guys that he should have walked through.
If you could give him some advice, what would it be?
I mean, listen, I've given him so much advice over the years that he was with us, and you see he didn't follow it, so what good am I giving him advice?